Hi everyone, and welcome to the Propcast. My name is Louisa Dickens, co-founder of LMRE and board director of the UKPA, and I shall be your weekly host. Each week for 30 minutes, we'll be connecting the VCs, PropTech startups, and real estate professionals globally, and assist in bridging that famous communication gap we all love talking about. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Propcast. This is a special edition episode as we will be chatting through the launch of the first ever PropTech Canada report by the PropTech Collective. The fans of it, Courtney and Julia. So welcome, ladies.
Hey, well, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, Lisa.
First of all, can I just say congratulations on the launch of the report. I'm sure we have far more reports to come, and I can't wait to chat through the findings in a moment. But everyone who's listening, the PropTech Canada report tells you all you need to know about PropTech in Canada. There are 3 sections of it, which we'll be going through. So one is, exploring the status of PropTech in Canada. The second section will be Canadian real estate, PropTech spotlights. And then we'll finish off with some of the trends of the Canadian PropTech ecosystem. LMRE are proud sponsors along with PwC and BCD. But quickly, before we dive in, audience, I'm sure you are familiar with Courtney Cooper from Lake Partners for a previous episode we did on gender diversity earlier this season. But those who are not, Courtney is a principal at Lake Partners. In this role, she helps identify and scale promising real estate technology companies, provides market analysis, and manages relationships with industry partners. Courtney spent most of her career in real estate, including more than 4 years at Dream, leading innovation and business transformation initiatives. Now, Courtney takes a human-centered approach developed through her graduate studies in strategic foresight and innovation at OCAD University. She holds a BS in Business Administration with a specialty in operations from Georgetown University. And Julia, who is also joining us today, is a startup workplace experience consultant and co-founder at the PropTech Collective. With a BSc in chemistry and economics from the University of Waterloo, she started a journey in PropTech in 2015 as an innovation strategy consultant at Founders Intelligence in London. As Julia's passion for helping entrepreneurs succeed and grow, she joined Techstars to launch and run their first ever international PropTech accelerator program. Julia is a community builder at heart. She loves all things strategy, people, and operations, and is now focused on building engaged, inclusive, and collaborative work cultures and communities that inspire positive change in the tech industry. So yet again, welcome both of you. And why don't we start with Julia? How and why did you start the PropTech Collective? And then I guess we could go on to a little bit more about when you first decided to write this report.
Absolutely. And thank you for the kind introduction. It's one of those things that I absolutely love, origin stories. So I guess going back in time, the PropTech Collective actually started out of the work that I was doing at Techstars. So for those unfamiliar with the Techstars program, it basically is an accelerator program that brings in 10 companies, early stage companies, and helps them get to the next stage of growth. And we were basically taking in 10 up-and-coming PropTech startups and trying to connect them with our corporate partner Colliers. And during this program, it became evident to me as the program manager that there's quite a large silo between the tech and real estate industries. So the language that they were speaking at the end of the day was just a little bit more separate than we wanted. And I think our goal here is to just increase collaboration, right? We can't really do anything without working with others. So during this program, I ended up meeting Courtney, who was a mentor in it, which was amazing. And we got to chatting about basically the incredible talent that is in the PropTech industry and how many eager technologists want to build solutions for the real estate industry. And we just kind of came to the conclusion that there's basically a need in this space to create a place where people can authentically come together and actually collaborate. So most of the real change, I think, as you guys know, happens when people know and understand one another. So to date, from our experiences, it felt like there were a lot of conferences and lots of big speakers that, were going on panels and looking to educate the market on what's going on. But the approach that we were really interested in taking is to bring people together to solve actual problems. So I can't really explain much better what PropTech Collective does, except for putting together an event, right? So if you look at our events, we actually hosted one before when it was still, in person, but it was done at our labs, and it was just very much focused on how to do this partnership work between startups and corporates. We brought together a bunch of folks, including like RioCan and Ration City and, Ojo and RBC Ventures. And we actually had that authentic conversation happen on stage. So that's, I guess, to summarize it all, we started PropTech Collective to provide that authentic collaborative space, and have been fortunate enough to bring together a community that's enabled us to do so.
Awesome. And Mas, I guess when you first started putting this report together, there's, we spoke about this earlier, there's such, I guess, little data collected on the state of the market in Canada. Did this serve as quite a big barrier in making the report and sort of, I guess, a hunger to fill the data gap?
Yeah, I mean, so I was trying to think of exactly where this came from. There's definitely a data gap. There's lots of different information sources, but nothing that really puts it all together. So, I think that this was actually the idea of one of my co-authors, Alice, who brought up the idea of writing a report. She's done a number of these types of reports for in her career, and she's very, very interested in PropTech and the Canadian ecosystem. And I think when we started, this wasn't really what we were envisioning. I don't think we were envisioning creating a report as in-depth or detailed as this, but what else do you do during a pandemic? We've got lots of time on our hands. And so I think as we kept digging, we kept finding more interesting things and growing the report. But, from a data perspective, it's hard. Like, there's lots of data sources. PitchBook is, the primary one that I use day to day. So we looked there, we looked at Unisu, we looked at, at Elate, we've met with, we meet with hundreds of companies a year. And so, I looked at all the companies we had looked at in Canada, but you really had to pull them together and then, categorize them. And so, from our perspective, this is a starting point. We had a number of reviewers that we sent out the report to before we published. And even from them, we've got several ideas for other startups that we missed and should be included for the future. So, I think the way we see this is a starting point. It's, for creating the first benchmark and, something that will be live and living. And we're going to figure out how do we create this in a sustainable way so that we can continue to add to it and start to track changes over time.
Yeah, well, I would say it's a very good starting point, a very strong starting point. Why don't you tell us, obviously we'll go into a lot more detail, but why don't you tell us a bit more about the key emerging trends you're seeing at the moment in the Canadian PropTech ecosystem so our audience can get a flavor for it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to chime in on that. It's really interesting because having worked in London for a few years, I remember when I was leaving, people were like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Going back to Toronto." And everyone was like, "Oh, I understand." Everyone had a very favorable impression of the city. And looking through this research in the report, Toronto is the first and basically the biggest growing city in North America and one of the largest tech hubs. And this is from a report that we've also kind of sourced from CBRE. But if you look at the actual, I guess, where is the Canadian environment going? We have the most construction cranes by a wide margin. So 27 of all cranes in the major metro areas are actually in North America are in Toronto, which is impressive. There's also
27%, 27%. So one third. It's crazy.
That's mental.
Yeah. So I thought, sitting on Primrose Hill when I was looking over at the cranes in London, I thought that was a lot. I came back here and they're everywhere. But yeah, it's also a really interesting combination of obviously the construction industry growing, but also the talent. So if we're looking at Ontario, which is the province that Toronto is in, if it was actually a state in the US, it would be the 5th largest by population. So we have lots of people here and obviously working in tech. There's about, 24,000 tech companies in Ontario and 270,000 workers in tech. So that's a big portion of it as well. And then you combine with the talent, the I guess intersection of both real estate customers and also the funding and support systems that exist in place. So when we look at the customers, about 10 of the top 50 institutional real estate owners are based out of Toronto. So this is like folks like Manulife, Almers, CPP Investments, as well as the real estate clients. So companies like Oxford, Cadillac, Fairview, and as we mentioned before, the construction companies, so PCL and Aecon. So, it's that we have the funding and support systems in place. So when I talk about support systems, I actually am pointing towards the accelerators that we've discussed before, the government funding as well, and venture studios. So it's kind of this amazing storm of different, I guess, pieces of the ecosystem that are coming together, and they're all centered in Toronto. So do you think that Canadian ecosystem is definitely, it's a key hub for real estate innovation, and it's definitely, Canada is definitely creating an incredible home for the next generation of PropTech startups.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an emerging hub, which is obviously will continue to grow. You touch upon in the report about friendly immigration policies as well, which obviously will make it a lot more attractive for startups, outside of Canada to launch there. Our head of Europe, Dylan, recently wrote a blog about the EU and their tricky border restrictions, which makes it actually really difficult for startups to launch there. How are your immigration policies more accessible? I don't know, Courtney, maybe this is one for you since you work with so many startups directly.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to pull up the number here, but Canada has made a commitment to bring 400,000 immigrants a year between 2021 to 2023. So that's their target. I don't think we need to get into the policy specifically, but if you look at some of the other countries, the US for sure, it's just a different environment. So I think that in Canada, it's a lot easier to bring in great talent. Canada is looking for great talent from around the world to reside here. We have one of our partners at Relay is invested in a company called Mob Squad, and they're in the space and helping US companies and others hire great talent. And it's just a different environment here because the country is looking for immigration. We need it. It's a big part of our growth. I think that's something that's missing right now, and everyone's quite eager to be able to open the borders back up and welcome people. So, immigration is always tricky, and in every country it's still not easy, but Canada is actively looking to bring in talent and hopefully trying to make it as easy as possible.
I think you both mentioned obviously talent just now, and in your introduction that I think Canada is one of the most educated countries in the OECD. Talking from, I guess, LMRE's personal experience so far of Canada, it's been pretty impressive. So if I'm comparing some candidates in the US market to candidates based in Canada, in the US, so a head of sales or a president would obviously be very much focused in the US market, but candidates doing that sort of role based in Canada, not only do they know the Canadian market, they also know the US market because they can't just rely on, I guess, business in Canada. We just find most of those candidates understand much larger demographics, I guess new buying personas, characteristics, and I get an ability to work across two different cultures. We've also seen that Canadian salaries are significantly lower than US salaries, at least 30% lower in places like Montreal. Not quite sure why that is. Maybe it will change to more VC money coming to Canada and more, I guess, it's easier to operate a remote workforce now. I don't know if you guys have any sort of thoughts on this or what you've seen in terms of talent.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think that, your dollar, like the US dollar goes further here, that alone makes a difference. But in terms of the competitiveness, like, I think it is changing. We have a lot of our companies that we work with, it's challenging to find talent. You've got companies like Shopify and Google and others that have opened up here. So, there's incredible talent, but it's still a competitive market. And, so I think that it's growing. And what's nice is that I think CBRE called it the largest tech hub in North America. You talked about how it's a highly educated population, a fast growing city, lots of people coming here. So I think, the talent ecosystem is continuing to grow, but, so it depends on what cities you compare it to. But, I would say that, it's great talent anywhere they are in the world. They have lots of options.
Yeah. I was just also going to add on the immigration point that we talked before. So obviously a lot of the talent that we have is kind of renewed on a yearly basis, right? So I think that also probably plays a factor in the lower, I guess, salaries that you probably see here, just from the immigrant base that does come and starts residing in Canada.
Yeah. I think also a lot of students at universities, I recently did one with UCLA, they're all asking about, can we do remote working? And I've spoken to some Canadian candidates from top universities there, and they're all asking for it. So if I was a startup founder and I'm sort of looking at my budget or headcount, it does probably make sense to definitely go over to Canada and start recruiting there. As long as you're in the sort of the right time zone, it's all doable.
Position yourself to thrive with a 5-week course that covers the essentials of designing, developing, marketing and operating offices in 2021 and beyond. Check out the Future-Proof Office course at realinnovationacademy.com. Quote LMRE for a 10% discount.
Now, I briefly mentioned VCs earlier. In the report, you analysed something like 300 PropTech startups like Sonda, EcoBee. Who are the biggest companies and where are you seeing the funding coming from with them? Who are the top investors? Courtney, this might be one for you.
So, I think the way we broke it down in the report was based on companies that focus on PropTech. So obviously, I'm at Elate. That's what we focus on, real estate and construction technology across North America. Green Soil has a similar focus, as well as Groundbreak Ventures, which was founded in association with Hopewell. And so I'd say those are like the three sort of biggest that are focused on PropTech specifically. But then there's like quite a range. Novia, Real Ventures, Panache, they all invest in, I think they were the top 3 VCs, like generalist VCs that invest in PropTech. And then of course you have Mars and BDC and others that support a significant amount of startups and, also have, are heavy weighted in real estate technology companies. So I would say those are the largest, but if you look at the page, we highlighted, as many as we could, but there's still many more. We also highlighted some of the US investors that are focused on Canada. So Brick and Mortar, Metaprop, Second Century Ventures, they are some of the most active in Canada, along with SOSV, FJ Labs. And these are just the ones that, have made investments. Like I know already that there's many more that have their eyes on Canada and are talking to Canadian companies and, are probably have made investments that aren't announced yet or that that aren't public.
And how many of them are sort of PropTech focus then? Obviously Reach, Metaprop, Brick and Mortar, they all are. Are there any, I guess, general investment funds looking to come into Canada who are generalists?
So FJ Labs and Mucker Labs invest early stage, and they're both generalists as well as SOSV.
Okay. And I guess moving into section 2 of the report, we're going into a little bit more about the traditional real estate players like Oxford Properties, Avison Young, Dream, which obviously Courtney used to work at. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the approaches they're taking when it comes down to PropTech. I interviewed John from Avison Young, and they look at sort of internal innovation, tech partnerships, acquisitions. Can you talk us through a few strategies you've seen and you went through in the report?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite interesting. So, I thought it was interesting. Both Oxford and Avison Young both talked about data as a core part of their strategy and really wanting to differentiate through advanced analytics and data science and focus on partnerships with other startups. Oxford and Dean has talked about how it's really about operations. And so that's his core focus, is how he can use technology to help, get the highest and best use of their people's time. And so he's dedicated to working with global SaaS companies that can service their global portfolio. And he believes that, they don't need to be writing code and they can find partners that have cloud-based SaaS platforms to work with. And then Avison Young, John's background, as you know, and your listeners know from the podcast, is very, very focused on data. And how they can integrate the data that they have internally, as well as all of the other real estate and real estate adjacent data sources that they can put together into Avant, which they recently launched. And, I think it's interesting because his perspective is so clear in the quote that we included, because technology just takes time, money, and a vision. The data is the hard part. Like so really, really focus on data and creating that data as a sort of enabler for the future. And then, Dream and Madame share some different views. Dream is very focused on their new impact vehicle. So they just launched the first public Canadian impact vehicle, and they're really focused on how do they make their real estate more accessible, inclusive, and sustainable. And that's a theme that we hear from, or, I hear from every real estate leader that I speak to, and you see it every single day in the news releases that are getting shared around net zero goals and just general commitments to ESG. I'm sure, Louisa, you hear the same, and I'm sure you're hiring for those roles.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing new roles, new teams being formed in these businesses, and there seems to be a lot more of these businesses that finally got sign off to make these big hires, which are very costly to business. This would cost them a couple million extra to put about 5 people in place. They're like heads of digitalization, IoT consultants, data scientists. Like you said, data is bloody everything and almost every business' biggest problem, but could be the most powerful thing they actually own. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of movement in, I guess, headcount and hiring from different industries to help people transform. I guess we could start moving on to section 3 of the report, which is you talk about 3 main trends. So trend 1 being Canada has a growth in tech and PropTech ecosystem. Trend 2, global PropTech startups are building footprint in Canada. Trend 3, startups are bringing successful business models into Canada. Do both of you want to talk the audience through and elaborate a bit more of these trends?
Yeah, happy to do so. So I think trend number 1, we kind of touched upon it in the beginning of the conversation, but definitely growing tech and prop tech ecosystem in Canada. So again, from the combination of talent and the funding and support vehicles, and also the intersection of that with customers, like in the same similar location. So diving into a little bit maybe of the support systems that might be interesting to your audience. As I mentioned before, there's quite a few venture studios that are now focused on building companies internally and testing out these MVPs out to the market. So our labs being an example of that. They've kind of created a company called Our House, which does prefabricated laneway suites and mass timber avenue townhomes. So we're seeing a lot of innovation come from the venture studio world. The accelerators, obviously the Collier's PropTech Accelerator powered by Techstars is still a big one, but there's also Reach Canada, who's launched one. We also have a few others that are up and coming, but we're seeing a lot of companies basically spin out of those and get accelerated. And in terms of the government, I guess, policies, one good example would be the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So that's CMHC. They're on a mission to make housing more affordable for everyone in Canada by 2030 and just launched a massive housing supply challenge. So basically investing $300 million in funding over 5 years to just collaborate with citizens, stakeholders, and other companies to develop innovative solutions. So definitely, I think there's more money and more excitement around the PropTech field in Canada, and that's super exciting. And I guess this kind of connects also with trend 2, which is really global companies coming into Canada and opening an office in Canada. And Louisa, I think you probably have seen a lot of this yourself, but there's tons of folks that are making Canada kind of their second home. They are big PropTech companies like VTS, for example, as well as fast growing ones like Onsite IQ and Skylight. So this has been starting, I'd say, since 2019, and we just continue to see this grow. And again, it's due to the competitive Canadian edge, if I might call it that, but basically that friendly environment for doing business, the highly educated workforce, favorable exchange rate, and just this diversity of talent that just, I think at the end of the day, really does lead to better business building. So, yeah.
And a big shout out to our friends at Toronto Global who helped us understand this trend a bit better and really work with a number of companies from across the world who want to locate in the GTA, which, as you saw in the report, is nearly 50% of the companies are located here. Montreal and Vancouver are also thriving tech hubs, depending on what what specialty you're looking for, especially like AI or others, Toronto, Montreal, there's lots of great places to locate. But it's interesting to see companies come here. And I think what's most interesting is, these are companies that are have an office here. There's many others that do as well. And, there's, I would say most PropTech startups have somebody, whether they're located in Canada or the US, that covers Canada and spends a lot of time here because, we talked about it before, but just the real estate ecosystem here, we kind of punch above our weight and just have so many large real estate companies that are located, are headquartered in Canada.
And for our audience, for when they want to download this report, now it is officially live. How do they do that?
So they can go to proptechcollective.com and there's banner, or proptechcollective.com/report.
Awesome. And I guess to round this podcast, is there, obviously what's the best way for the audience to connect with you both? And is there any little bits of information or advice you'd like to share with the audience? Julia, go first if you like.
Sure. So yeah, feel free to reach out on me I'm on Twitter. So it's my last name. It's a Romanian last name. So sorry for the spelling, but CHELARUU, and then also on LinkedIn. So happy to chat and also see how we can collaborate. I guess in terms of the short little recap, I really do want to kind of basically point to the fact that, from the startup perspective, Canada can be a second home for everyone. And there's definitely this massive influx of funding, excitement around PropTech and organizations like ours, for example, that are here to support them. So I would really encourage them to download the report, read more about what we're doing, and just reach out if we can help their journey as well.
Yeah, echo all of that. And, I would encourage everyone to download the report, take a look at some of the great companies that are based in Canada. We've got a number of companies and names that you would know, companies like Sonder and Properly and Breather, Bridget, Lane, Jobber, lots of just incredible PropTech companies that are based here. I think, to me, I didn't realize there's, a number of construction marketplaces and last mile logistics that are solving last mile logistics for construction. So companies like Go4, Reno-Run, Toolbox, Dozer. So, I discovered a lot of companies doing this research, and I hope other people do as well. And I hope people will also reach out and tell us what companies we missed or what companies we should include for next year. So take a look and reach out to us at PropTech Collective. And, if you're in the space, also reach out to me personally. You can find me on LinkedIn or anywhere else.
Awesome. Well, look, once again, congratulations, ladies. Also, shout out to Alice, who's another one of the authors. Definitely big thank you to Alice for pulling it all together as well. And really looking forward to seeing what's next to come for PropTech Canada and also the PropTech Collective. And I'll catch up with you both after the show.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Propcast, and a big thanks to our special guests. Make sure you visit our website, www.nmre.co.uk, where you can subscribe to our show, or you'll find us on iTunes and Spotify, where all good content is found. Whilst you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate if you could rate and review us on iTunes, or if you simply just spread the word. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday, and I'll catch you later.
Hi, this is Nelson from Property Quants. I'd like to invite you to join our Introduction to Data Science and Machine Learning for Real Estate seminar. To learn more, visit propertyquants.com/seminar and use special code LMRE20 on Eventbrite for a discount.
You're listening to a podcast company podcast. This was made by Podcast Syndicator, where we help you go from start to grow to making money with your podcast. Let us help you share your message and your voice with the world. Reach out now, Jason at podcastsyndicator.com or Brett at podcastsyndicator.com to find out more. Thank you for listening, and do come back to hear nothing but the best podcasts.